It's better there'd be two of you. Any better there'd be two of you. One's too much. Welcome, bienvenue, Anine. We are live on YouTube. Shaw is having some connectivity issues, but YouTube is our official feed, so we will get started. I'd like to acknowledge with respect that we are in Robinson here on treaty territory and that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and known as Bawating. Bawating is home to Garden River First Nation, Batchewana First Nation, and the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. Madam Clerk.
I have a motion by councillors Hollingsworth and Scott. Resolved that the minutes of regular council meeting of January 8, 2024 be approved.
All in favor? That carries.
Under agenda item 3, declarations of pecuniary interest, Mayor Shoemaker has declared with respect to the closing and conveyance of a part of Pure Street, as well as the law firm represents the purchaser and the associated bylaws, which are 2024-6 and 2024-7. Councillor Hollingsworth has also declared with respect to those same matters as the purchaser is a relative. And Mayor Shoemaker has declared with respect to the deeming bylaw for lots 28 and 29 Wilson B subdivision for the Sault Ste. Marie Housing Corporation, as the law firm represents the Sault Ste. Marie Housing Corporation regarding that item.
Council, any other conflicts to declare? Seeing none. That will bring us to
Agenda item 5, a motion by Councillors Spina and Scott, resolved that the agenda for January 29, 2024 City Council meeting as presented be approved.
all in favor. Got Malcolm White's last meeting. CAO White, or is yours?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, just a couple of brief remarks on the occasion of my final meeting, city council, in this chair, and any chair for that matter. It's been quite a career here. I started October 11th, 1988, and just over a month later, Matt Shoemaker was born. If that isn't a sign that maybe it's time to move on, I think anything else would be. I'm also, it's neat in that I was hired with the city as a recreation supervisor for sports and special events. And the first event I ever worked with was Bon Sioux back in the day. So it's kind of neat that we're wearing Bon Sioux buttons today to mark the upcoming opening of this year's Winter Carnival. Over the years, I've worked with many wonderful staff, elected officials, and volunteers who've all contributed in various ways to the community. I've learned a lot from them, and I especially want to note the role of volunteers in our community. It's really the volunteers that make our community go, that bring the quality of life in so many areas and address the challenges that we have. And it's always important that we support all our volunteer components with whatever they do, whether it's sports, whether it's social services, or what have you. Also, I would be here for hours if I wanted to recognize individuals. So I won't, except for one. I did want to recognize my first supervisor with the city, who was Debbie Bourne, manager of recreation and culture. And it was really through her guidance and support in my development that I was able to go from being a frontline supervisor in recreation to be blessed with the position I have today. And I'll always be thankful for her presence in my life. Sault Ste. Marie is a very special community, as all of you know. I was born in Toronto, lived there for 5 years, then 6 years in a tiny town up in northwestern Ontario, and then we moved to Sault Ste. Marie, where we found a fit as our family, and we now consider it our hometown. After working through a career that was really marked by mostly economic downturn and hard times, so we struggled to keep our levels of service going. We're now moving into a very bright future, a period of growth, and I'm really excited about that. And I'm really excited that instead of what happened in my generation, where most people had to move away to find a job, now we've got people moving into the community. And I'm really looking forward to being a citizen as part of the community and seeing what happens over the next 5 to 7 years. I'd like to recognize Tom as the incoming CAO, and he'll be up in this seat for the next meeting. And I'd like to recognize all the staff who are here tonight. You've all been very helpful to me during my tenure as CAO. And I thank you for all your support and know that you'll give Tom your support. And finally, as is usual for retirees, I will miss the people I work with, but if I'm being totally honest, I may not miss the meetings. Thank you.
CAO White, thank you for the service you've given to the community. While you may not miss the meetings will miss you. And so you have earned a well-deserved, You deserve your well-earned retirement, and we hope that it is long and prosperous for you, and look forward to having you as a member of the community. But please feel free to join the gallery anytime to watch the meetings, because there's a seat there with your name on it. Thank you, CAO. Madam Clerk?
Agenda item 6.1. Annette Katajimaki, the Chief Executive Officer of Canadian Mental Health Association, is in attendance.
Welcome to council, Ms. Katajimaki.
Members of council for the invitation to speak to you this evening. Do you have a presentation? And I'm going to go really quick. 3 minutes goes fast. I just wanted to highlight our vision statement. We're a thriving, inclusive community that values and nurtures recovery, resilience, and hope for all. This is what we're going after, I'm sure all of us as community members. A little bit about CMHA. We're affiliated with CMHA Ontario and the national boards, but we're separately incorporated and governed by a local board. So we have local folks on our board. We really believe in collaborations, and we currently have collaborations and partnerships and sit on committees with the hospitals, police services, schools, mental health, addiction agencies, social services, and so many more. We offer support and services to those with mental illness, addictions, family members, friends, providers, employers, and those seeking information. We offer a variety of supports. First, we have our clinical support stream, which includes case management, counseling, justice, dual diagnosis, and access and information services. And you can see the number of individuals and sessions that we have completed up until December 31st. So that's 9 months of the year. Our community and social supports include Hope House, Club 84, the Downtown Ambassadors Program, and a big thank you to the city for funding that. Iris Place located in Wawa and the Beehive located in Elliott Lake. They're both drop-in centers. We have peer navigators that are embedded in the Sioux Area Hospital Emergency Department, and we do an awful lot of presentations on request to employers, to community organizations and such. Our housing supports include managing the low barrier shelter for men, the warming station in the winter months. We have supported housing. We manage 46 units with varying levels of support, anywhere from 7 hours a day to 24/7. We have a housing outreach team that's part of the GSAB's housing prevention team. And we also have housing case management rent supplements, where we are able to supplement rental payments so that our folks can live in better housing. We have several active service collaborations. I'll just highlight a few of them. Our community wellness bus, which I'm sure you've seen around town. It's the purple recommissioned ambulance. We have the community resource center that we have staff at every day. We participate with partner agencies in a single session counseling program where people can just come and get one session, either virtually or at a walk-in. And as you're aware, the Youth Wellness Hub, which has just opened, we're also a partner in that initiative. We are especially proud of our investments in peer support. So peer support is an emotional and practical support between people who share a common experience of mental health, mental illness, and or addictions. A peer worker has lived through that similar experiences and uses their recovery and challenges to help others. So they're commonly referred to as PWLE, people with a lived experience. So these folks have at least a certificate or a diploma in mental health and or addictions, and then they have their own lived experience. And that way they can communicate so much better with the people they serve. We're funded through government, service contracts, donations, fundraising efforts. You have the list in front of you. I'd like to end with just a statement around our values at CMHA. We use a person-centered approach where the person is the center of everything we do. We practice inclusivity. We realize collaboration is key. We want to be innovative and think outside the box and not rely on funding to do what needs to be done. And we really promote service excellence with our staff. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for the informative presentation, the great work that you do in the community. I'll turn it over first to Councillor Hollingsworth to see if she has any questions, as it was her proposal to have you provide this summary. So Councillor Hollingsworth, can you hear us on the screen?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to echo what you just said, Mayor. Annette, to you and your team, I know that you and I have met one-on-one about a month or so ago, and I appreciate your time to educate me and update me on all the programs you offer. I just think that tonight was a good opportunity to update the whole community of all the services that you and your team provide. And I'm hoping that tonight's presentation may nudge some people that may be looking for more support. And I just wanted to give you this opportunity to use it as another platform to get your phone number out there, your email of your team, knowing that there is support out there for individuals, for families, for loved ones, for friends. So again, thank you for taking this time to come to council. And again, I just want to reiterate that I know all of us around this table appreciate the hard work that you and your team are doing. And we have many people around this table, Councillor Spina, Councillor Dufour, Councillor Lisa Van Zmelen, Councillor Caputo, and Councillor Bruni, and all of us care. And many of us are leaders in social services. So thank you, Annette. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Bezuallen?
Thank you. I just want to say on behalf of DSAB, and Annette and I meet regularly, that the success of the Community Resource Center would not be what it is today without the partnership and the support from you and CMHA. And I know Luke was chair then. He's hasn't been chair for about 2 weeks. So on behalf of all of us that are on the DSAB and Housing Court Board, your partnership and passion and the staff's commitment is really cannot be measured. It's just really spectacular, the work ethic. And I see personally the downtown ambassadors very often. And I've only ever had really good positive interactions with them. They are present. They are there when other services are not available. And I think it's definitely making a difference in our community. So thank you, Annette, for your tireless work. It's very difficult when you're dealing with such extreme circumstances at times, but thank you, and thank you for your team.
Council, anyone else? Thank you for your presentation. Council, we're going to go to a couple of motions that are further down on the agenda. 9.1, I believe, is the first one. I'll turn over to Madam Clerk.
So I have a motion by councillors Dufour and Bezuallen, whereas since the first contact of Europeans with the indigenous inhabitants of this area, Sault Ste. Marie's history has been intertwined with French culture and language. And whereas Etienne Brulé is believed to be the first settler to ever set foot in Bawating in 1622, 402 years ago. Brulé identified the area on Samuel de Champlain's 1632 map as Sioux, giving Sault Ste. Marie the distinction of being the oldest recorded community in Ontario. And whereas Etienne Brulé claimed the area of Bawating for France, naming it Sault de Gaston after the brother of the then King of France, Louis XIII. And whereas Father Jacques Marquette, a Jesuit priest, established the first permanent settler mission in 1689 and adopted Sault de Ste. Marie as the name of the settlement, in effect ridding the area of its connection to the brother of the king and honoring the Virgin Mary, all the while maintaining the name Sault, which is the traditional French word for rapids. And whereas since 1622, there has been a French presence in the area and a French name for the post-contact community we know today as Sault Ste. Marie. Whereas over the course of 150 plus years since Confederation, Sault Ste. Marie has developed into the commercial center of the Algoma district, which proudly boasts a French population of roughly 10%. And Sault Ste. Marie welcomes and encourages its district neighbors to travel to and visit Sault Ste. Marie. And whereas the corporation of the city of Sault Ste. Marie's relationship toward its Francophone residents has not always been respectful and productive, And whereas Council of the City of Sault Ste. Marie passed a resolution commonly referred to as the English-only resolution in 1990, which fractured relations between the municipality and the Francophone community. And whereas in June 1994, the Ontario Court General Division struck down the 1990 Council resolution and declared it ultra vires, the municipality's authority. And whereas in January 2010, Mayor John Rosewell apologized to all Francophones in Canada on behalf of the municipality for the 1990 resolution. And whereas it is Council's desire to improve the relationship between the Corporation of the City of Sault Ste. Marie and its Francophone residents, now therefore be it resolved that the Chief Administrative Officer ensure through scheduling of existing employees or filling vacancies that arise for resident-facing staff, that there is the ability for Francophone residents to navigate municipal services in French on a go-forward basis. Further be it resolved that the English version above and the French version of this resolution are equally authoritative. Proposé par Luc Dufour, appuyé par Lisa Vazoala, considérera que de le premier contact des Européens avec les habitants autochtones de la région, l'histoire de Sault Ste. Marie fut autrement liée à la culture et les langues françaises. Et considérant qu'Étienne Brûlé, qu'on estime être le premier colon à mettre le pied à Bawating en 1622, il y a 402 ans, et qu'en 1632, il a identifié cette région sur la carte de Samuel de Champlain en tant que le sud, de sorte que Sault Ste. Marie a la distinction d'être la plus ancienne communauté de l'Ontario. Et considérant qu'Étienne Brûlé a revendiqué la région de Bawating pour la France en le nom Sous de Gaston, du nom du frère du roi de France de l'époque Louis XIII, et considérant que le père Jacques Marquette, un prêtre jésuite, a établi en 1689 la première mission permanente de colons et a adopté le nom Sault de Sainte-Marie pour désigner cette colonie, débarrassant ainsi la région de son lien avec le frère du roi, honorant plutôt la Vierge Marie, tout en conservant le nom de Sault qui signifie rapide en français traditionnel. Et considérant que depuis 1622, il y a eu une présence française dans la région et qu'un nom français a été attribué à cette communauté dès le premier contact avec les autochtones, dont nous l'appelons encore aujourd'hui Sault Ste. Marie. Considérant qu'au cours de 150 ans et plus, depuis la Confédération, la ville de Sault Ste. Marie est devenue le centre commercial du district d'Algoma. Fier de compter une population francophone d'environ 10%. Sault Ste. Marie accueille et encourage ses voisins du district à se rendre à Sault Ste. Marie pour la découvrir. Et considérant que les relations entre la coopération de la ville de Sault Ste. Marie et ses résidents francophones n'ont pas toujours été respectueuses et productives. Et considérant que le conseil municipal de la ville de Sault Ste. Marie a adopté en 1990 une résolution communément appelée la résolution unilingue anglaise, qui a rompu les relations entre la municipalité et la communauté francophone. Et considérant qu'en juin 1994, la Cour de l'Ontario, Division générale, a annulé la résolution du Conseil municipal de 1990 et a déclaré l'autorité de la municipalité ultra vires. Et considérant qu'en janvier 2010, le maire, Jean Rosewell, s'est excusé auprès de tous les francophones du Canada au nom de la municipalité de Sault Ste. Marie pour la résolution de 1990, et considérant que le Conseil souhaite améliorer les relations entre la coopération de la ville de Sault Ste. Marie et ses résidents francophones. Il est donc résolu que le chef de l'administration s'assure en établissant les horaires des employés actuels ou en pourvoyant les postes vacants au sein du personnel en contact avec les résidents, que les résidents francophones puissent naviguer les services municipaux en français de manière continue. Il est aussi résolu que la version française et la version anglaise de la présente résolution ont également force de loi.
Wow. I'd like to thank first off Councillor Dufour and Councillor Vezo-Allen for being willing to move and second this motion. Il y a 34 ans, le 29 janvier est devenu un jour de deuil pour la communauté francophone à Sault-Sainte-Marie. L'histoire de notre ville ne peut pas être racontée sans reconnaître l'impact positif des francophones. Comme le dit la résolution, il y a plus de 400 ans que les francophones s'y mettaient le pied ici. Le nom de la ville est un nom français. Les premiers explorateurs européens étaient des explorateurs français. La ville est le centre commercial du district d'Algoma avec plusieurs communautés qui sont majoritaires francophones. Mais l'histoire le plus récente ne nous donne pas cause à célébrer. Le conseil de ville a commis une grave erreur en 1990. Nous avons oublié notre histoire. Nous avons créé un conflit entre les Français et la communauté majoritaire. C'était une erreur qui a eu des implications dommageables pour notre ville relatif aux services fédéraux et provinciaux qui ont été établis à Sudbury et ailleurs, au lieu d'ici, à Sault-Sainte-Marie. Je sais que la communauté francophone a apprécié quand le maire Roswell a offert ses excuses à tous les francophones du pays et quand le maire Provenzano a élevé le drapeau franco-ontarien à l'hôtel de ville en 2015. Mais il reste du travail à faire pour réparer la relation entre la ville et les francophones de notre belle communauté. On espère que cette résolution est le début d'un nouveau chapitre qui continuera à célébrer les impacts positifs des francophones de notre communauté. 34 years ago, January 29th became a day of mourning for francophones in Sault Ste. Marie. The history of our city cannot be told without being inextricably intertwined with French culture and language. As the resolution says, French impacts in our region can be traced back more than 400 years. The name of the city is a French name. The first European explorers of the region were French. The city is the commercial center of the Algoma district, which has multiple majority Francophone communities. But its most recent history is checkered. City Council made a mistake in 1990. We forgot our history and we created conflict between Francophone residents and the community at large. It was a mistake that has had lasting impacts on our city as it relates to federal and provincial services, which move down the highway to Sudbury or other communities further afield. It is without doubt that the Francophone community appreciated the apology given by Mayor Roswell in 2010 and the raising of the Franco-Ontarian flag for the first time at City Hall in 2015 under Mayor Provenzano. But there remains unfinished work to repair the relationship between the city and its French residents. It is my hope, and I believe to be the hope of all of Council, that the resolution before us today will be the start of a new chapter in a positive impact that Francophones have and continue to play in our community. And if there's any other councillors who wish to make comment, I open the floor. Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the honor of being able to move this resolution and participate in what I believe is a very good thing for our council to do. Both of my parental grandparents are Francophones. My father's first language for a time was actually French. But in the 1980s, when I was born, there were not as many opportunities as exist today for French to be a living language in our city. And as a result, I don't possess the same French skills as my grandparents and my father's side of the family. I'm very proud today to say that my children participate in French immersion, and I'm also very proud today to move this resolution. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the provision of living French services in our community and in our city hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dufour. Councillor Gardy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. When this resolution was passed, I was 10 years old, and my grandfather was a member of that council, representing Ward 5, who voted in favor of this. And I can tell you that several years later, having reflected on it, about a year prior to his death in 1995, he admitted to me what a mistake it was. So I'm happy, one, to make some personal amends for him, And I'm glad we're making amends for the community at large. It was undoubtedly an unnecessary mistake, and I'm glad you brought it forward. I also think it was a good move on your part to inform former Premier Peterson of what we did, and it was some kind words back to you and the community for following through on this. Thank you.
Segretti. Seeing no other questions, avec ça, je demanderai le conseil de ville. Tous ceux qui sont en faveur, levez la main. All those in favor, raise your hand. La résolution est approuvée à l'unanimité. Now we get to discuss Sioux College. So, thank you. Merci à tout le monde qui est venu aujourd'hui et on se verra ici à l'Hôtel de Ville et on se communiquera en français. Rachel? Madam Clerk? That brings us to 9.5.
I have a motion by Councillors Scott and Bruni, whereas the federal government has recently announced policy changes that will negatively affect publicly funded colleges, particularly those in small northern and rural regions of Ontario, by altering the framework through which international students are admitted and managed. And whereas Sioux College has developed an important public-private college partnership with Trios College that contributes $40 million annually in revenue to Sioux College, equal to 1/3 of the Sioux College budget. And whereas students enrolled in programs offered through the Trios public-private partnership campuses are recognized as students of a publicly funded college and are held to the same high standards of academic rigor, are provided with comparable wraparound support services to those offered at Sioux College, and receive a Sioux College credential. And whereas the elimination of postgraduate work permits for students graduating from programs offered through the Trios public-private partnership campus would result in an immediate suspension of revenue to Sioux College, adversely affecting the sustainability of the college and undermining the ability to support local employers. And whereas the federal government's policy changes have been made abruptly without any consultation with post-secondary institutions and without a clear understanding of the severe financial hardship to smaller public colleges, primarily outside of the GTA. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Sault Ste. Marie City Council urge the federal government to reconsider its recent policy changes and specifically exempt public-private partner institutions from being excluded in offering students who successfully complete their program of study a postgraduate work permit.
There are two motions listed under 9.5.
There are, did you want me to read the provincial one as well, and then we'll cast them separately?
Sure.
So the second motion is by Councillors Scott and Bruni, whereas there is a growing concern over the inadequate funding of post-secondary education by the Ontario government, which has placed additional financial pressures on publicly funded colleges, undermined their sustainability, and made it more difficult for colleges to respond to the needs of local employers. And whereas Sault College has developed an important public-private college partnership with Trios College that contributes $40 million annually in revenue to Sault College, equal to 1/3 of the Sault College budget. And whereas students enrolled in programs offered through the Trios public-private partnership campuses are recognized as students of a publicly funded college and are held to the same high standards of academic rigor, are provided with comparable wraparound support services to those offered at Sault College, and receive a Sault College credential. And whereas the elimination of postgraduate work permits by the federal government for students graduating from programs offered through the Trios public-private partnership campus would result in an immediate suspension of revenue to Sault College, adversely affect the sustainability of the college, and undermining the ability to support local employers. And whereas the Ontario government has recently called together a group of experts who have released recommendations in the Blue Ribbon Panel report that are designed to ensure the long-term sustainability of the post-secondary education sector in Ontario. Now therefore be it resolved that Sault Ste. Marie City Council urge the Ontario government to immediately implement the Blue Ribbon Panel recommendations and actively work with the federal government to restore the eligibility of public-private partner colleges to grant students who successfully complete their program of study a postgraduate work permit.
Council, we've got a number of people here who can answer questions. I know there are some. We've got David Orzetti, the president of the college, Sherry Smith, Rich Peters, Rachel McDonald, and Mitchell is here on behalf of the board, I believe. So I will start it off with probably just one overarching question, then I'll take questions from council, or they can take questions from council if there are any. Yes, thank you. Welcome to council, Mr. Orzetti.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Thank you. I can also just congratulate Malcolm White on his retirement. Congratulations, Malcolm. It was my pleasure to work with you many years ago. I had the privilege of also teaching with your brother at Cora, and it's great. It's what a milestone. We're getting old.
Some of you are. Mr. Orzetti, could you give me what the crux of the issue is? I mean, the resolutions explain kind of what you're asking for, but what's the crux of the changes that have been announced that are going to affect the college?
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. The real issue is not in the fact that the federal government has made changes to the number of study permits that will be issued to provinces across Canada, but in the additional step that they have taken, and we believe they've overreached in this regard, by removing the eligibility of the postgraduate work permit from being issued to public-private partner colleges. So if you're a purely private institution, generally speaking, the province of Ontario or in other provinces, your students are not eligible after they receive their study permit, they complete their time of study, to be able to seek a postgraduate work permit. They're not eligible. Public colleges, public universities, students are eligible to receive a postgraduate work permit. And up until the announcement last Monday, all colleges or universities that had a partner in the private sector who they had an agreement, a licensing agreement with, where we deliver the curriculum, we do the quality assessment, the oversight, the student receives our credential in all ways, shapes, and forms. These individuals are our students. They're enrolled at Sault College. The dollars flow to our college campus. They have, for some reason, been now excluded by the federal government from being able to offer the graduating students at our partner campus postgraduate work permits. So if the postgraduate work permits are not available to them, even though they've successfully completed their program, they will not enroll in these partner colleges. If they don't enroll, these schools will not make the revenue that they need to exist, and they will not flow us roughly $40 million to our budget, which is 1/3 of the entire Sault College operating budget. So it's a very significant, and I would suggest unintended consequence of using, as the minister put it, a blunt instrument to try to address international student enrollment in the country. I have as well received a number of questions from members of council. I want to thank the councillors that have reached out and asked questions. I'm happy to briefly address those if you'd like, or provide an opportunity for some extended time. I invite you to come up to Sault College and be happy to sit down with you for several hours to go through a briefing with you if you'd like, but I could also answer the questions.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Vesuelen.
Thank you so much. And thanks, David, for the invitation, but I'm at Sault College pretty much every day. My son Aiden attends there, so know it well. And I also used to teach in Con Ed there as well. So my question was, because when you're looking at the post-graduation worth certificate, and I remember I did employ one of your graduates through an NOHFC program a couple of years ago through Big Brothers Big Sisters in marketing. So just a couple of questions. What is the graduation rate among your students, the entirety of them at the two campuses, the Brampton and Toronto?
Right. So on the main campus in Sault Ste. Marie, the international student graduation rate is 97%.
Okay, but that wouldn't affect
two-
students that are here attending Sault College, correct?
It will, if when the cap is put in place, it will potentially reduce study permits for all institutions, whether they are public or private, or a private connected to a public. So all of the universities, public colleges in Ontario, the public colleges connected to private partners are definitely impacted. Absolutely. So the number in Ontario is roughly, well, the overall number in Canada is 35%. There's estimates as high as 50% in Ontario. So we will take that hit regardless, is the way it's looking from what the minister is saying. What we are trying to also, ameliorate or avoid is taking an additional hit with our private partner who offers our credential to students, because if that postgraduate work permit, if they're not eligible, then that campus potentially ceases to operate, and that's generating a fair bit of revenue. So, but to get to your question, 97% on our campus here in the Soo, 99% graduation rate at the Brampton and the Toronto campus. Our students are 2,800 on 2 campuses. Now, when you add in domestic enrollment to the college, the graduation rate is 81%. So combined graduation rate, domestic and international, is 81%.
And of those graduating, what percentage seek out the postgraduate work permits?
Just over 90%, 91 or so percent. So it is very relevant to most of the graduates.
And what programs are offered through the partner college?
So ECE, early childhood education, computer programming, business, PSW, or personal support worker and developmental support services. There's also some graduate certificates, healthcare leadership, cybersecurity, and global business management. So there are a number of programs. I wouldn't say every program that's offered, much like other colleges and other public-private partners, that are labor market driven, if you will, that are a little more perhaps relevant to the immediate needs in the labor market. But there are certainly 4 to 5 programs that are key to the labor market at our partner. And, during the pandemic, our partner stepped up, graduating many personal support workers during that time. So playing a really important role in the economy.
So the fear being that if you can't offer international students the postgraduate work permit, that they will not come and attend. Is that really the base?
You got it. That's the real issue. And what we have been discussing with both the federal and provincial government is that the jurisdictional issue around the issuance of the postgraduate work permit should be left to the province, the Ministry of Colleges and Universities, to determine which public and potentially which public-private partner campuses will be eligible for those permits. In other words, we've heard this term used through this discussion over the last number of weeks, bad actors, right? And I would acknowledge that there are bad actors in the sector. And I would say that those exist both in the public and the private sector, frankly. And so it's really not appropriate to take a broad brush and simply say that all of the institutions in Ontario have this problem, because they don't, frankly. And we want the ministry to be a little more surgical in how they implement the access to graduate permits. So I'm looking for your support to be able to say to the federal government, they've picked the number, they've decided on the number, but we really need the ministry to determine who meets the high, rigorous quality standard to receive postgraduate work permit.
And from my recollection, when I did employ someone with the postgraduate work permit, it had to be relative to their field of study, and then there was a time limitation. I want to say it was a year. So what changes are they similar still? Because this was about 5 years ago.
So there's really the change that the federal government is implementing is that previously, if you took a 1-year certificate program, you were eligible for a 1-year postgraduate work permit. If you took a 2-year program, you could receive a 3-year postgraduate work permit. Now they're saying it's year for year. So on the 2-year program, diploma program, you would receive a 2-year postgraduate work permit. So that's changing moving forward. I am suggesting to both the federal and provincial government that if they want to do more to solve the housing challenge in this country, that they incentivize students to take programs, for example, related to the skilled trades, right? We will give a longer postgraduate work permit, maybe it's 3 years or 4 years, to somebody who enters electrical, plumbing, carpentry, civil engineering, and incentivize students and shift students to areas that are strategically important to our economy, as well as, for example, healthcare programs. We know what's happening in our community with regard to healthcare, and we think there's an opportunity for us to continue to expand and grow and train healthcare workers for the province. And so suggestions around lengthening postgraduate work permit time for key strategic labor market areas is really important.
So my last question is, have you heard directly from the students attending that they would not attend if they're not guaranteed a postgraduate work permit?
Well, absolutely. We know that 90% of them, and folks at our partner campus having these discussions, we've tried to reassure them. There's been a bit of panic, as you can appreciate, sent through the sector with the minister's recent announcement. There's been no consultation with anyone in the sector about these changes. And so we've had to reassure students that they are in good standing for a postgraduate work permit. But after September, the fall of 24, that eligibility is removed. So yes, we know that students will be choosing other institutions potentially. We're not sure if the capacity will be there, but given the number of student study permits that are being reduced, 35% across the country, going back to 2022 numbers, we believe that there'll be certainly adequate space in the sector given the cuts to the number of permits issued.
Let my other colleagues ask questions. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Councillor Bezuwelen.
Thank you.
Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Rossetti. Regarding the $40 million, how devastating if Sioux College loses this $40 million of revenue? How does that affect Sioux College?
So very good question, Councillor Bruni. And, trying to be balanced here and, addressing this in a way that doesn't unduly create uncertainty and, panic among our employees and organization. There's over 720 employees at college, $43 million in payroll, as you know, into the community and into the economy. So very significant. I've had a number of discussions. We've sent out emails internally and had an all staff meeting this past week to reassure everyone that we were doing all we can to try to address this issue. But certainly it would be inappropriate for me to suggest it would be business as usual without that much of our budget being impacted. And the irony of this is that all of the money coming from our partnership relationship from Trios College, from the two campuses, is being driven into the economy in Sault Ste. Marie. That $40 million is here in our economy on a daily basis working. It's providing jobs at our college, and it's helping to support local employers and train individuals for the workforce here. So we've got a residence project that the board has approved. I want to thank our chair, Chair Don Mitchell, who's here with us this evening, as well as the senior staff in our organization that are here. The board at the very first meeting, I came into this role July 1st, very first board meeting that I was in this role in, our board decided that they would support the plan to develop a new residence on our campus. That plan has to go back to the board for their final approval, but we're working through that process. The sticker price on this, as you can imagine, is very sizable to try to build a 200+ residence, something that hasn't been done in the community in over 31 years, but we need it. And we've decided that, we will not enroll any more students at our college campus until we are able to expand our housing. And we want to continue to do that. And so that's why it's really important to us. But this is the money from our partnership that's going to be used to help us finance and pay for exactly the thing that the federal government is concerned about, which is building more housing capacity.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bruni. Councillor Spina. We can faintly hear you, Councillor Spina. I don't know why that is. No. We will, while you continue to test that, I'll have Councillor Gardy go.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for coming, Mr. President. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Counselor.
Just to review what you were talking about. How many international students and on average do you think that we've enrolled here locally over the last 4 or 5 years? Do you have a sense of the thousands of students that have been enrolled in Sioux College internationally over the course of the last 4 or 5 years?
I'm going to use a number. So right now we currently have the official number is 999. So 900,000 students internationally on our campus currently today. Each year for the past 3 years, we've been about the same. So 3,000, if you will. Really go back to say 6 or 7 years ago, pre-pandemic, numbers started, creeping up in terms of international enrollment, 150 students, 280, 450, and so on, up to the number that we're at now. Might be an upset limit of 4,000 to 5,000 over the last 7 years. What I can tell you though is that the enrollment at the college today is about the exact same that it was in 2013. So a little bit more than 10 years ago, same enrollment. If you go back to 2013, we had about 2,500 students on campus and enrollment began to decline domestically. We lost about 100 domestic students per year for a decade. So we've gone down about 1,000 domestic students in the same time period as we've helped to bring in or brought in and recruited 1,000 international students to take those spaces. So we have basically the same enrollment. There's not, I just want to debunk any myths out there that might be that, Sioux College is growing rapidly, it's out of control or something like this. We're at the same level of enrollment that we've had, for more than a decade. The difference is that there's more jobs at Sioux College now being supported by the private partnership because there's oversight, quality assurance, and so on. Folks are registering and recruiting and that. So the jobs are here in the home campus. Sorry for the long answer, Councillor.
No, it's great. I appreciate that. And I also appreciate you've only been president since this past summer. That said, your predecessor did a lot of great work to revitalize and reinvest in your campus, which both domestic and international students have capitalized on and enjoyed. There wasn't the same level of investment in housing, which I think you'd pretty freely admit. So though our post-secondary numbers at Sioux College are commensurate with those of 2013, as you mentioned, those students are comprised much more by those who move to our community to enroll in Sioux College, but they don't have anywhere to live. So the crux of the issue, as I see it, and I think you've kind of alluded to it, is housing. And I'm of the opinion that this came about due to a lack of coordination between the provincial and federal governments, over successive governments, over governments of different parties. I think it's been a failure of post-secondary education funding in the province of Ontario. I understand that post-secondary institutions needed to bolster their enrollment with the lack of domestic students and for the sheer fact that funding from the province didn't level up to the need. I'm glad to hear that you and the board are considering now to invest in some housing for your students. But we're in the position we're in because there never seemed to be a really great plan or much communication between either level of government. And I'm hopeful that over the course of the next little while, that improves for everybody's sake. One further question, and you elaborated on it,
Right.
I had it jotted down here. So if you could just clarify a little bit more for the public. You speak about $40 million annually in revenue to Sioux College. That said, would you say that that $40 million impacts, like, is it $40 million injected right into our local economy from your partnership with Trios?
Absolutely.
And could you just kind of enumerate to me or us
So
precisely how?
So it's part of our operational budget. It's part of our capital plan. That money is absolutely critical to our day-to-day operations. Without it, we don't necessarily have the money to make the investments we want in renewing our infrastructure, purchasing equipment to train students, or some of the new things that we're proposing, which is building a residence and a sports field and track and some of these other things, health science building, and we need to modernize our trades facility. We've got some fairly significant needs. I would also agree with your observation around the sector and the system. And again, I think, the timing on this, it's unfortunate and there hasn't been enough consultation. I think, as I say, I'm looking for a bit more of a strategic approach from the province on this, in terms of how the postgraduate work permits are distributed, as well as the study permits. But we need to have the federal government slightly change tact in terms of the eligibility here. And so with that, I want to be clear what this isn't. This isn't a motion to ask you to support more international students coming into Sault Ste. Marie. That's not what this motion is. This motion is not asking you to put more pressure on community and social services. That's not what it is. This motion is requesting your support to have the federal government address a component of the policy that they've rolled out recently that impacts public colleges that have private partners. There are 16 public colleges in Ontario of the 24 public colleges that have partnerships. And I would say 12 of them will immediately be in deficit without relief on this particular issue. And so the Blue Ribbon Panel, which the provincial government undertook, it's great. But I think we need the Blue Ribbon Panel times 10, given the impact of this particular decision.
Thanks. Through you, Mr. Mayor, finally to President, or is that colleges like Trios College, private colleges, they're essentially business ventures, yes?
Absolutely fair to say. Yeah, this particular partner started out, I believe, in the computer science space, business, private sector business space, and working with public entities, working with provincial government ministries and so on, and started doing training, evolved as a training institution, training folks, computer science related work, and evolved in this space. They've been around for 32 years and they've got campuses all over the province, but there's only 2 campuses that we are a partner with them in. So they have a strong, fairly robust domestic enrollment component to what they do as well. But
no housing.
But so interesting you say this. So this past summer, after I started in the role, I was in Toronto and Brampton with one of the owners. There are 2 partners that own Trios College. And we made, in a couple of days, 4 different stops to locations to look at potential areas for housing, conversion of apartment buildings, purchasing apartment buildings, hotels, motels, conversions, which you're seeing some of the folks in the post-secondary attempt. There are some very active discussions taking place with our partner and other folks in the Brampton and Southwest Toronto area to look at how they can offer housing more directly. But they do have a housing department. They have housing support, student employment services, mental health services, and academic tutoring and upgrading and support for the students, just like we do at Sault College, and very similar services.
Just out of professional personal curiosity, this will be my final question. Those students who, and I think you kind of answered it, but those students who study at Trios, Do they have the same level of service as students who attend your campus here, or your home campus here in Sault Ste. Marie? Like, do they benefit from everything that any international student in Sault Ste. Marie would benefit from being enrolled as an international student at Sault College proper?
So that's a great question. That's a quality question in terms of the rigor that the province wants to see. The answer to it most directly is yes. I've been to the campuses, I've been in the classrooms, I've talked to the students, I've talked to the folks that work there. We validate all of the services that are delivered. They are absolutely comparable to the services that we provide here at Sault College. And again, our curriculum, our credential, our enrollment, and quality assurance process. So they are getting that experience and they are getting those services. You can see by the graduation rates, they're 99%, right? So they're doing good work at our partner campus. And there are many private career colleges across Ontario. I believe there's over 400, and they are not all created the same.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Garrity. We're going to try Councillor Spina again. Oh. Can't hear you. I'll get you to send me the questions and I'll ask them for you. Thank you. Councillor Kinnick.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to President Orizetti. Most of my questions you've already answered. I just had a question about how many student visas is Sault College and Trios giving out every year? And what is the percentage of students coming to Canada of those visas issued?
So approximately, so we have 2,800, roughly 2,800 students on the two campuses, in the GTA, Brampton and Toronto Southwest, and we have 1,000 here, so 3,800 this year in terms of student visas or eligibility to study here in Canada. And as I had mentioned earlier, not all of those students will seek a postgraduate work permit, but about 90% would. The other students obviously would travel back to their home country.
Kind of. So you offer like a student visa for them to come to Canada. How many actually come out of that, and how many visas?
So, okay, so okay, I get where you're going here. At the Toronto Brampton campus, of the roughly 997 students, only one student didn't show up. At the in the Soo, only two students didn't show up. And in comparison to domestic students, 15 domestic students didn't show up who enrolled. So international students that are committing to attend are, for the most part, all showing up.
And just one more question would be, with the work permits given after graduation, how many of your students are finding employment in their fields?
So we've been discussing this question, and there's not great data. We're estimating around 70%, 65 to 70% finding work in their field.
Okay, thank you very much.
I just, Councillor Kinnick, just could, there was one other question that you had sent me with regard to the food bank. I just want to let you know that we have made an investment in the food bank. It was $140,000 between 22 and 26. So it's going to be about, we had an initial investment and then $25,000 a year out to 26
So regarding that question, that was from there was a news on CBC, I think about last month, where it was downtown in, I think it was in Brampton,
Okay.
where the food banks were getting overwhelmed and they said they had to cut off international students from receiving help.
Right.
So just.
No, your point's a good one. And we have that concern as well in the sense of educating international students around the use of the food bank. Simply because it's available, it doesn't mean that you should be there showing up using those resources. Those resources are for individuals who are in need. And that is an ongoing process in terms of that education. So good questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Kinnick. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, Mr. Orizzetti. Wonderful, wonderful update. And I know you're working extremely hard along with the chair, Don Mitchell, in turning this around. So thank you. My question, can you comment on the last time tuition was raised for domestic students? I agree, tuition is important as a revenue, domestic and international students. And I know that domestic students are important to us as well as international, but can you comment on the tuition?
So in relation to the Blue Ribbon Panel, Colleges Ontario and the colleges across the province, along with the university sector, has encouraged the provincial government to act and lift the tuition freeze. So the provincial government 5 years ago decided that they would cut tuition by 10% and then freeze it. So that's taking us back to tuition roughly 2015 in terms of 2015 numbers. So that's, you know, it's making it challenging. I'm not sure. I don't think too many sectors are operating on 2015 budgets these days. We're not paying 2015 prices for gas, for groceries, for utilities, for all of these other things. So it makes it hard in the public education sector to be operating on 2015 tuition rates. Thank you,
Okay.
Councillor.
Thank you. I think that's important for everyone to keep in mind. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Caputo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Orizzetti. It's cited that in Canada, last year we brought in 800,000 international students. So continuing to bring in, and they said about half come to Ontario. So continuing to bring in 400,000 students in Ontario doesn't seem sustainable. Do you have a strategy to support Sault College without international students?
I don't know that any institution in this country has a strategy to support their institution without international students. It is an economic reality of the sector. If we did not have international students in this community, we would not have many of the jobs that employers need filled. You don't have to go too far through this community to go to the different businesses and establishments to find that there are international students working in many establishments in this community, investing in the community. It would be very, very difficult for us, I think, or any other institution to not have enrollment when it comes to international
Right.
students. So I get your point. It's as I've said, you know the story with the domestic enrollment and domestic clients, what makes it extremely difficult.
But year over year, if we keep bringing these kids in, where are they going to live? And how are they going to, we can't, you said, I think today the number you told me was about, say, 100 million for a 200 bed residence. So
The example, I mean, we had this conversation
Yeah.
earlier, and that was regard to the Finnish rest home.
sorry,
So,
okay, yeah,
I'm certainly hoping that our residence is nowhere near that,
Okay.
because we won't be able to build it, but you're right. And that's one of the reasons why over the last number of years, we have not increased the international student enrollment at the college. We are mindful that we have only a certain amount of resources available. And so although we could have our vice president of strategic enrollment and employment and partnerships, bring 2,000 students to our campus, that would be irresponsible. And what I have been trying to get across to folks, beyond Sault Ste. Marie in terms of, the federal and provincial folks, is we are absolutely committed to responsible, manageable growth where we can accommodate the individuals that come to our community, because the employers in this community come to me and say, I need, individuals in this background, in this background, in this background. Who do you have graduating in these programs? So we're also trying to fill a community need.
but this motion is more toward the having them stay. Giving them a postgraduate work visa. So if we continue to have people stay, where is everybody going to go?
So I think the main part of the issue here in terms of what the federal government has done is they've said, we are cutting the number of students being eligible to come to Ontario. They're cutting that, to Canada by 35%. Ontario has been exceeding potentially the prorated amount that we might receive from the federal government. So we might see a larger hit in Ontario than 35%. The issue in front of you is for you to say, hopefully, that our community is behind Sioux College in asking the federal government to allow postgraduate work permits to be issued for our partner institution. We already know they will have a reduced number, we will have a reduced number, as will all institutions. But removing our partner from the equation will immediately have significant financial consequences. What you're talking about in terms of lowering the number of international students into Ontario, that's already going to happen. That is a certainty based on the federal government decision. I'm not saying that's the right decision or the wrong decision. I have concerns about the strategic nature by which they're doing, or lack of strategic nature by which they're doing this, because I don't think we're really solving a problem that's the challenge, where we have a shortage of healthcare workers and we have a shortage of skilled trades. But they've, as the minister said, used a blunt instrument. I'm not advocating for more students coming into Sault Ste. Marie. That's why we've been holding our enrollment steady. The postgraduate work permits, the private partner, will also be taken into account as part of that reduction. We just want them included and accessible so that, for example, we don't take all of the public colleges that have a private partner. We will get hit based on the reduced number by the federal government. But if this also is part of the equation, we will also not be able to protect our students that need the postgraduate work permits, and they will go to students at other institutions whose money does not come to support our community.
Right. So as much as I appreciate Sioux College, and I don't want to see anything detrimental happen to Sioux College, what's being asked of us here is not exclusive to Sioux College. You're asking us to consider a letter to the federal and provincial governments for all of these public-private partnerships, to which some of which you have said may be bad actors. So how are they gonna siphon through that? And how do we know who's the bad guy and who's the good guy?
So the ministry is working on regulations now in terms of greater compliance, I believe, to ensure that both public colleges, public universities, and the private sector partners are more rigorously regulated. I think it's a misnomer to think that just because it's a private institution connected to a public that already has an entire layer of public regulation put onto it, separate from any of the pure private institutions, to say that we should just simply remove all public-private partners from having this eligibility to grant a permit. The minister is accomplishing what the minister is setting out to do, which is dialing down the number of study permits right across the country. Ontario will take the biggest hit. There's no doubt about that. Other provinces like Quebec will see an increase in study permits. So will, I believe, Saskatchewan and Alberta. BC will take a hit, and I believe Nova Scotia as well. But Ontario will take the biggest hit. There are actors in this environment in Ontario that I think have grown too quickly, too fast, without the supports that they've required. And the minister isn't differentiating. It's just simply saying, this is off the table and this is the reduction. So we are left now in Ontario trying to determine who, as you say, who is eligible to get these or receive these postgraduate work permits. What we're saying is we have a very high quality partner that the federal government has arbitrarily targeted, the partners of public institutions, and is just simply removing those permits when there are other actors in this space that need to be regulated. I'm going to leave that to the ministry. We're going to be very active, obviously, in helping to frame this discussion. But again, that eligibility is really important because these are good schools. These are good schools in this space. The reduction's happening. We know that. We're not arguing about the reduction or bringing more students to Sault Ste. Marie or bringing more students to Ontario. We're talking about the criteria by which the ministry decides who is eligible for a permit. And I'm saying,
Okay, thank you. Just one final comment. I think if anything, this discussion has brought about talking about issues that are sometimes difficult to talk about in public. So the thing with international students that I think is sort of being uncovered is that we really need to make sure that, and I'm not saying Sioux College, Algoma University, I'm not pointing fingers, but I think we need to ensure that these students are not being exploited when they get to the places where they have signed up to be, that there is housing for them, that there is, that they've been given a full picture of what the economy looks like and what the cost of living is. I asked Harvest Algoma to provide some stats, and I was sent that the post-secondary institutions in 2022 received 30,000 pounds of food. And that is the same amount that the shelters received outside of DSAP. This is a serious issue. And I really think we need to be looking at ways that we can address it properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, Councillor Caputo makes a great point. The issue around the ability of an international student to care for themselves and not to be, an additional user of social services in our community is really important. I do support Minister Miller's decision to raise the threshold that of the amount of financial ability from $10,000 to $20,000 that an international student is required to bring when they come to Canada. The challenge right now is that hasn't taken hold yet. So everybody that's here currently is sort of under that old regime and old threshold. So you're going to start to see that have some traction and make a difference. And it needs to be a number that reflects the real costs. That number was set back in early 2000s. And so it's really out of touch. And I would support that number moving to whatever it needs to be to ensure that students have the resources that they need. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Rossetti. Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Rossetti, for coming here to help explain this issue to us. I know that just having sat here and listened to your answers, I've definitely gained a more fuller appreciation of the issue that's facing not just Sioux College, but our whole community and our country, of course. I just wanted to quickly mention two things. The first one is I wanted to congratulate you on moving so quickly on plans to build a student residence. I know that from my perspective, when that news came out this summer, that Sioux College was seriously looking at building a new student residence, that there was a collective community sigh of relief. I mean, there might have been a few comments about wish this was 5 or 10 years ago too, but better late than never. And I want to offer my encouragement to yourself and to the board that Sioux College continue to go down that path, hopefully with the financial tools they need to do that successfully. But either way, I would seriously rank the provision of more housing as one of the top priorities and the top ways that the college can prove to the community that they are serious about not externalizing some of the costs of their revenue growth onto the community. So I hope you can take that back to the board and again, very happy to see your strong personal support for that. The second thing that I wanted to address is you pointed us back to the Blue Ribbon Panel and to the role of the Ontario government in this as well. And as I was browsing it here, I came across a really interesting quote where this quoting from the Blue Ribbon Panel, the Auditor General's recommendation was quite specific. Do not further increase dependency on international enrollments without a longer-term strategy in place to address the risks of this approach for fiscal sustainability. This recommendation is almost 2 years old and as far as we know, still awaits a comprehensive response. The Blue Ribbon Panel is also aged now too. It came out in 2023. So even though our motions and our discussion tonight have centered around, as you said, the blunt instrument that the federal government has used, which I am now convinced that, Sioux College does not belong under that blunt instrument. But I don't want it to be lost here that the province in Ontario has had a major issue for a number of years, has been warned about it by Auditor Generals, has been warned in the Blue Ribbon panel. Like this was some time in coming and we did not prepare, and the ministry does not have that comprehensive plan. So I would also hope that in your discussions with the ministry as this goes forward and in the mayor's discussions with our provincial representative, that it would be made clear that communities are getting frustrated. Communities want to see that longer term plan because these costs can't just continue to be externalized into the community. Colleges and universities and the ministry that governs them need to take that action to come up with a sustainable future for all of us. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dufour, and really appreciate your comments on point. And we are doing everything we can to get this residence project moving. If we could build 2 or 3 more residence, buildings, we will, with the will of the board. By comparison, Cambrian and Canada College down the highway, over 600 beds on campus at each. We have 157 units on our campus. We are way behind on this issue. There was not adequate investment in housing on our campus, and there needs to be, and that's why it became the #1 priority at the first meeting. And I want to thank our board for being supportive on that. The Blue Ribbon panel, you're absolutely right. It needs to be implemented. We are challenged. We receive less funding than a university student does from the provincial government. We also have half the tuition that we collect from an international student. So an international student pays about $16,000 at the college to attend. At a university, about $31,000. Big difference. $2,700 to attend a college, $7,000 plus to attend a university. So we are doing this on frozen tuition, lower tuitions, lower grant, all the way around, and really getting squeezed. So I expect the provincial government to do a lot more on this file and to step up and make the investments that help to really drive our economy. The interrelatedness of this and training young people to reach their full potential and contribute to our economic success in Ontario and Canada is absolutely fundamental to the agenda of both the provincial and federal government. And so we thought we would divide the issues here and make the ask more specific, and also perhaps give everyone a bit more of a perspective and comfort as well in terms of, this is what we're asking from the federal government, this is what we're asking from the provincial government, so that you perhaps as well felt that we were not targeting one level of government or another.
Thank you, Councillor Dufour. I've got some questions here, Mr. Orzetti, from Councillor Spina. He asks, how many students at Sioux College and at Trios would be affected by the federal government's change? As in, what would the number be? You said 1,000 here. What would that change?
2,800, so 3,800 students. 3,800 students impacted. Now, we would not necessarily lose all 3,800 students, but we would immediately, the 2,800 that are at Trios, we've got 1,000 left here. There's going to be a percentage on the prorated amount that the province, the federal government implement as part of our number. We could see a 40% reduction to our enrollment here on the campus, down to say 600 with the Trios campus vanishing. So it's a significant impact.
So potential impact of like 2,100 students less in your system.
2,800 at the Trios College, plus, sorry, did you say 3,100? Is that what you
I
said?
said 2,100.
So 2,800 at Trios and another 400 on our campus. So 3,200 students.
All right.
Yeah.
And so excluding the 40 million direct impact, do you know what the indirect impacts, the indirect economic impacts are of the students who would, be excluded from participating?
I mean, the estimated impact into the community is $170 million through the college. I'd have to have some time to break that down for those particular students in that group. We're certainly hoping that doesn't come to fruition when it comes to the number of international students that we're able to enroll. But we know what the budgetary impact is. It would be beyond 40 if we're talking, to your point, beyond the Trios campus. That's the Trios campus, that's 40. It would be higher than that, based on whatever the federal government is going to allocate to the province, and then the province thereby allocate to the individual institutions.
And he says the local job market's already strained. Do you know the potential impact of losing these students would have on the local job market? For example, part-time workers at restaurants.
So I think, I mean, everyone in the room, being out and about in the community at various, restaurants and stores and other service locations knows full well the impact and the economic contribution that our international students are making to the community. That's significant. If you estimate 400 less students potentially, that's 400 students, not renting, not spending, not enrolling, not paying tuition. On top of, again, I want to be clear, the really important piece of this is the eligibility of the postgraduate work permit for our partner. If that eligibility occurs, then we will say collectively our 5,000, let's say, student enrollment between the private, our partner and us, we will then be in the mix for what would be a reduction of whatever number of students that the province is going to decide. So we will be we will have a reduction any way you slice it. But we would like our private partner to continue to be active and operational, even if they have to reduce from 2,800 students to 2,000 students, for example.
Thank you. I've got a question for Mr. Fair. With respect to students at either of our post-secondary institutions, would it be a fair conclusion to say that they represent the primary candidates that we use for our RNET program?
You, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. And in the certainly in the early days of the RNET program, the first year, almost all of the candidates that we approved were graduates of local post-secondary institutions, and Sioux College, I think, was 80% of those graduates. So it's a significant contributor to our community, given the older demographic that we had and the labor challenges that we are experiencing across a number of employers. These international students are playing a really vital role in filling needed roles in healthcare, business operations.
Okay, thank you. That was one of the things that was a lingering question in my mind. So I'll just, before I go on to further questions I've got for Mr. Orsatti, Councillor Spina sent in a comment, which I'd like to read for him. It says that it was dangerous for our government to enact these changes without consultation, apparently without regard for the impact it will have on our communities. I look forward to talking to Mr. Orsatti and following up on his offer to visit Sioux College to learn more, and while helping to continue the conversation to find meaningful solutions. So thank you, Councillor Spina. Sorry we couldn't get your mic working there.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to thank Councillor Spina as well for the questions and the comments. Appreciate it. And I'm sorry I wasn't here that directly from you, but we'd be happy to have you up at the college.
But you sounded better than ever, Sonny. Mr. Orsatti, so you've got 2,800 students at Trios, right?
Correct.
And roughly 1,000 here. So, and I think you said 91-ish% of the students at Trios want that work permit, that post-graduation work permit.
Right.
So if Ontario is going to have a reduction of international students of, say, 50%, that tells me that off the bat, your 1,000 here are going down to 500. Let's assume that they're applying it equally across the board. Is that accurate?
There's
And if 91% of the students are looking for post-secondary work or post-graduation work permits, that means call it 10% that aren't. So of your 2,800 over there, you might only have 300 left. Is that accurate?
300
students at Trios who don't really care about the post-graduation work permit. 10% of the 2,800.
right.
280 students. Yeah. And though the students who are here represent our 80% of the applicants into our RNet program. So the problem is not just with your private partnership. The problem is that everything is completely intertwined with everything else. When we were having, as a municipality, a problem funding Harvest Algoma, we turned to our partners like Sioux College, Algoma U, and they all contributed to making sure that Harvest Algoma sustained itself. We turned to them to be the point of first contact for RNet, which is the only way we are going to grow our population because our death rate otherwise outpaces our birth rate from organic growth. So that is intertwined with all these decisions. Now Sioux College has come to us and said, here's this intricacy in the federal policy that is going to potentially take 40 million out of our local economy, just from the private college side, potentially more with the reduction of 50% on the local side, from 1,000 to call it 500 students. And we're being asked to support them. And the answer is, you've got my full support, and I suspect you will have council's full support as well. The decisions that the federal government makes and the provincial government impact so much more than what they intended to impact. There are unintended consequences to all their decisions. And if you don't have $40 million in your budget, I suspect that one of the things you might have to look at is your continuing contribution to Harvest Algoma. One of the things you might have to look at is not building a residence, which won't allow you to grow further. One of the things you might have to look at is not developing a health science building, which could be, we've had this discussion preliminarily, a site for a NOSM campus here that will assist us with recruiting future physicians to help with another issue that we've got on our agenda on physician recruitment. So this is not just a decision that is solely focused on what it appears to be on the surface, but it's a decision that has implications across our community. And so you've certainly got my support, and I certainly hope the council will endorse both of these motions, because both levels of government need to think through the complete impact of their decisions a little more carefully. So with that, I will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I will call the vote. All in favor? Well, which one are we doing first?
First of all, I'm going to open the one that's urging the federal government to reconsider its policy changes.
Okay, all in favor of the provincial directed motion? Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Second one is urging the Ontario government to immediately implement the Blue Ribbon Panel recommendations and work with the federal government.
So all in favor of the provincial directed motion? Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Rossetti, and thank you to the Sioux College team.
I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank members of council. This is a challenging issue, and I want to thank you for your very thoughtful questions around this, because it is a complex issue and does have many layers to it. I am optimistic that there may be other mayors and councils across the province that take up a similar position, as well as chambers of commerce and so on. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. It took a while to get there, but I believe that brings us consent agenda. Councilors, any questions on consent?
I just note that 7.9 and 7.10 are accepted.
Yes, as a result of my conflict and Councillor Hollingsworth's conflict. Seeing no questions on consent, we can have a vote on that. All in favor? That carries. Which brings us to
7.9 and 7.10 are actually bylaws, so we don't have resolutions to read for them separately. Agenda item 8.1.1. I have a motion by Councillors Scott and Gardy, whereas on November 22, 2023, the Algoma Public Health Board passed a resolution to undertake a feasibility study on the potential benefits and drawbacks of a voluntary merger of our two local public health agencies for the delivery of public health objectives. And whereas Algoma Public Health, APH, and Public Health Sudbury and District, PHSD, jointly wrote to numerous stakeholders on January 19, 2024, advising that they are undertaking a process to explore a potential merger of the two public health units and seeking feedback from those stakeholders on this proposal. And whereas since 2019, the Government of Ontario has attempted to change the delivery of public health throughout the province, first by attempting to force the merger of all Northeastern Ontario health units into a single health unit in 2019, which the government abandoned at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. And subsequently by incentivizing health units to explore voluntary mergers by paying the costs associated with undertaking the feasibility studies for such exploratory reviews. And whereas the delivery of public health has been shown within the last 4 years to be a matter of great local concern. And whereas consolidation of APH with PHSD would be servicing an area spanning over 700 kilometers east-west from White River to Warren and 500 kilometers north-south from Chapleau to Manitoulin Island. And whereas any merged board would be unable to maintain all the regional representation that is currently represented on the Algoma Public Health Board, which is made up of a representative from Elliott Lake, one representative from Blind River, Spanish or Township of the North Shore, one representative from Wawa, White River or Dubreuilville, one representative from Thessalon or the municipality of Huron Shores, one representative from Bruce Mines, Village of Hilton Beach, Townships of Hilton, Jocelyn, Johnson, Laird, McDonald, Meredith, and Aberdeen, Plummer Additional, Prince, St. Joseph, or Tarbet. And whereas the history of services being delivered on a regional basis has often led to Northeastern services being consolidated in Sudbury. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the City of Sault Ste. Marie opposes the merger of Algoma Public Health with Public Health Sudbury and District, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the board chairs of both APH and PHSD.
Council, this was, this motion stemmed from a request from both PHSD and APH for stakeholder feedback into their investigation into whether or not they should merge. There's also a request to delegate on this. I will provide Mr. Breakin the opportunity to have his 3 minutes on the topic of the merger, Mr. Breakin. I'd appreciate if you got to that issue a bit more quickly than the last time you were here.
Members of council, respectfully, the position local public health agencies, LHPAs, are currently situated within this corporatocracy is already extremely problematic. My comments being given in favor of this motion to oppose the Algoma Public Health Sudbury and District merger are motivated by considerations given to accountability and transparency obligations both boards of health should have towards taxpaying individuals made up of men, women, people of the Algoma and Sudbury regions. APH, vision, health for all together. Mission, we promote and protect community health and advance equity in Algoma. Values, excellence, respect, accountability, and transparency, collaboration. APH, as virtually all other LHPAs, have not truly been accountable or transparent to the people they purport to serve throughout the last 4 years. If APH and PHSD merge, obvious limitations in accountability and transparency directives will become even greater, and it is only logical to postulate that this will have disastrous impacts on the community recipients and the service recipients in the prospect of 700-kilometer east-west, 500-kilometer north-south service coverage boundary that this merged LHPA would be operating within. I'm here this evening to bring to your attention the ongoing negotiations between the World Health Organization intergovernmental negotiating body and member parties concerning the WHO Convention, Agreement, or other international instrument on pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response, WHO-CA+. The zero draft of this WHO pandemic agreement has been available for public viewing since March 2021. The negotiating body is scheduled to submit its outcome for consideration by the 77th World Health Assembly in May 2024. All 8 LHPAs and other agencies in Canada were unjustly and blindly following the directives of WHO when the false pretense epidemic of international concern was declared by the WHO Director General in 2020. we are still tasked with addressing the catastrophic impacts of the negligence of the LHPAs. And given that this convention would create some sort of framework for a whole of government response in future scenarios, the merger of APH, PHSD would undermine the people of this region's unalienable rights to self-determination, mobility, freedom of speech, expression, privacy, bodily autonomy, and more. The WHO CA+ introduces a poorly defined concept dubbed One Health, which assumes unscientifically that the root causes of disease need to be addressed with full control of the WHO CA+ over all human, animal, and environmental ecosystems down to the community level. Opposed de facto world corporatocracy. I question the extent of how voluntary this APH-PHSD merger proposed by the Ontario Corporation might be, and I urge elected members of this council to stand firmly and unanimously opposed to the merger in the interest of the people of this region you swore to represent. No matter the results of the feasibility study, the WHO's authority is illusory. They, as well as all levels of the so-called government, are corporate entities.
Thank you, Mr. Brecan.
The only authority the WHO has is in the wealthy international organized crime syndicates
Thank you,
that act
Mr.
as its
Brecan.
primary.
Thank you. Thank you. Your mic is off now. No, that's okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brecan. Please seat yourself. Mr. Brecan. Council, any questions? Councillor Scott,
Just comments. If there are no questions, I can wait if you prefer that.
go ahead.
First, I'd like to thank you for bringing this motion to our attention. I jumped at moving it because I had previously served on the board at APH through City Council. A lot of what we saw even 4 years ago was similar. Province downloading costs to the municipalities, suggesting, in fact, prior to COVID, there were talks of a merger between the public health units as well, and then COVID hit, and obviously the focus on public health became the forefront. Some things that I think really we need to, and it's laid out in here, appreciate is the distance between us and Sudbury. We have quite a bit of distance, which means our problems are not going to necessarily be shared. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I remember certain, smoking rates, different disease rates, STI rates, all of these things differed between Algoma Public Health and Sudbury. So I believe that merging would be detrimental to the public health across both communities, especially given the fact that, as it's laid out here, geographically, they're so large and we all have diverse problems that need to be focused on. I was against it when it was suggested years ago and didn't make it this far. And I'm against it again. So I just want to quickly say that and thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Thank you for putting your name to this as well. Other councillors, questions, or Councillor Gardy?
Happy to support this for all of the reasons that Councillor Scott mentioned. We have seen the importance that public health has played over the course of the last few years. Undoubtedly, moving forward, public health will play an even more important role, or at least as an important role in our lives. And this move by the province is, would lead to a diminution in our public health system here in Sault Ste. Marie, and Sault Ste. Marie deserves its own public health authority, and I'm going to put my support behind it, and I'm sure the rest of council as well. Thanks.
Councillor Gardy, and thank you also for putting your name to this motion. Councillor Hollingsworth?
Thank you. I just have a quick comment. As a registered nurse, I basically was shocked that they want to move everything to Sudbury when my colleagues just clearly said that here up in Sault Ste. Marie, in this area, we do have different unique needs. And it's not just Sault Ste. Marie, it's Algoma. And there's many programs that are used day to day by our community, and such as for new mothers. I just want to emphasize that we have a lot of new mothers that use Algoma Health for education on breastfeeding, on immunization, and so forth. And later in tonight's agenda, we're going to talk about shortage of family physicians. we are concerned about our healthcare system. And now, with this, if this actually happens and this merger happens, it's just going to put another nail into the cracking healthcare system. So as a nurse, I'm hoping that we all support the idea that this merger does not happen and that we continue to have a voice here in Sault Ste. Marie, a voice here in Agoma. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Other councillors, questions or comments? Just like to note that, you know, this is a supposedly or reportedly a voluntary process that the boards are undertaking. But in 2019, it wasn't voluntary when they looked at forcefully merging all the northern public health units together. And this council opposed it then. And I think that what the pandemic did teach us, as Councillor Scott said, is that local decision making has a real impact in local circumstances. And we saw at the beginning of the pandemic, at least, much lower numbers in terms of COVID rates, COVID infection, and the spread of it because of decisions, I think, that our public health unit made and that were clearly communicated by the leadership of this community, Mayor Provenzano, and the public health unit at the time. And so I think that would be lost if we merged with Sudbury. The one size fits all approach would inevitably be applied across the district from from White River to Warren and from Chapleau to Manitoulin Island. And I don't think that that is in the best interest of our community. So I support this motion, which opposes the merger. And I hope that all of council will as well. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you.
Bring us to agenda item 8.1.2. That's naming members to a selection committee for recruitment of Deputy CAO Community Development and Enterprise Services. I understand that Councillor Vezo-Allen has indicated an interest in serving on that. Are there others?
Myself.
Councillor Hollingsworth as well.
Okay, then we will have a simultaneous recorded vote. So if you would each on your pad of paper put down either Councillor Vezo-Allen or Councillor Hollingsworth, and also put your own name. And once I've got those, I will ask Councillor Spina and Councillor Hollingsworth to write yours down. And when I ask, if you'll hold it up to the screen. Might as well do our Zoom ones first. Councillor Hollingsworth and Councillor Spina, could you each hold up your? So Councillor Hollingsworth has voted for Councillor Hollingsworth and Councillor Spina.
Wait, that your screen is blurred seemingly. Vezo-Allen. That's what I read.
Vezo-Allen?
Yeah. Give it a thumbs up.
And Councillor Bruni votes for Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Dufour votes for Councillor Vezo-Allen. Councillor Vezo-Allen votes for Councillor Vezo-Allen. Councillor Kennett votes for Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Zagordo votes for Councillor Vezo-Allen. Councillor Caputo, Councillor Vezoellen. Councillor Scott, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Gardy, Councillor Vezoellen. And Mayor Shoemaker, Councillor Vezoellen. That's 7 votes for Councillor Vezoellen and 4 for Councillor Hollingsworth. So it will be Councillor Vezoellen. And I will read that motion. It's a resolution by Councillors Spina and Gardy. Resolved that Councillor Vezoellen, the CAO, City Solicitor, Director of Human Resources, and Mayor Shoemaker ex officio be appointed to the selection committee to recruit a deputy CAO, Community Development and Enterprise Services. The recruitment process as outlined in this report be approved, and that staff be requested to bring revised guidelines for the recruitment and selection of senior staff to a future meeting of council for consideration.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Okay, agenda item 9.2 is the motion by Councillors Caputo and Vezoellen. Whereas employee recruitment and retention has proven to be a challenge for all job sectors, and whereas ensuring that the corporation of the City of Sault Ste. Marie is competitive with employee compensation within the current market is essential to attracting qualified employees and to retaining those already employed. And whereas being able to comfortably afford essentials increases quality of life, which is one of our strategic pillars. Now therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to investigate and report back to council on positions within the corporation of the City of Sault Ste. Marie and its external comparators with a view to creating a livable wage target within the corporation of the City of Sault Ste. Marie. Further be it resolved that a review of all of the City of Sault Ste. Marie's non-union salary grids, including part-time employees and students, be undertaken.
Councillor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to keep it short and sweet as the voice is not really voicing very well today. I just wanted to ensure that the city is in a good position moving forward to be able to recruit and retain employees. I think it's really important for us to be, I know it's difficult to compete maybe at the top with people, with employers like Algoma Steel, but I think that we can definitely do better than where we are right now. And just giving us a view into that is really all I want with this motion. So I look forward to the report as long as council supports this. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Caputo. Councillor Vezoellen.
Thank you through you, Mayor. Just some comments. This is coming through, our living wage motion and just trying to make it a little more concrete as to deliverables and what we're looking for. And I can say, we know that we are having difficulty in terms of part-time and student employment. And as the mother of a 19 and a 20-year-old, I'm telling all of their friends to apply to the city. I've been doing that through some of our volunteers and part-time staff where I volunteer. And it is very difficult because a lot of them are like, well, I can make more money A, B, and C. So I think we really need to take a look at what the comparables are so that we have a better scope and understanding moving forward. And definitely in some of the non-union positions when we're looking for talent, because, we want the corporation of the City of Sault Ste. Marie to be the employer of choice. That's the ultimate goal. And especially if we're looking at newcomers, recruiting people to our community, we need to be taking the lead on that. So I'm hopeful that this motion gives better parameters as in terms of what that deliverable is and getting the living wage. We don't need to be part of the Ontario Living Wage Consortium. We can set that for ourselves as a corporation. So hoping for unanimous support, and we'll just keep working towards this.
Councillor Dufour.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor, maybe through you to Mr. White. Is the review of the City of Sault Ste. Marie's non-union salary grids, including part-time employees and students, Is that in reference to Ms. Ottolino's report that accompanied the first living wage response? Ms. Ottolino had alluded to that was one of the options that could be conducted or was being conducted. Is this what contained in this
Mr.
motion the
Mayor,
same as
to,
there?
Councillor Dufour, I'm assuming so.
Okay,
This is a motion from council.
I was just looking and I didn't
Driven one.
see Ms. Ottolino here, so I wasn't sure. Okay, thanks.
I believe, Councillor Dufour, to expand on that, that the compensation bylaw, if I'm getting that right, requires a regular review of the non-union wage grid in any event, which I don't think has been undertaken in some time, so we're probably overdue to have that review. Am I stating that generally correctly? Yeah. Okay. All in favor? That carries.
And bring us to 9.3, use of consultants. Councillor Kinnock has amended the motion slightly that appeared on addendum. That is a motion by councillors Kinnock and Bruni, whereas the city has increased its dependence on consultants over the years, and whereas the federal government itself just reviewed its consulting policy and found it was overspending, and whereas consulting fees are not currently a line item in the budget and therefore cannot be properly discussed at the budget meeting, and whereas the previous council spent roughly $11 million between 2019 and 2023 on consulting fees, now therefore be it resolved that staff be requested to report back to City Council with a plan to make consultant fees a line item within each departmental budget. Further be it resolved that staff report to Council by the end of Q1 to summarize the purposes for which each of the city's 10 main service areas use consultants.
Councillor Kinnock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this resolution came about, the idea came about during the budget. I myself was emailing back with my counterpart, Councillor Bruni, yourself, and CAO Mel White. Through that time, I was going through the budget, looking where we could maybe save some money. And this is an area to me that wasn't clear. And when I reached out to yourself, Mr. Mayor, and CAO White, the response was we couldn't really discuss it at budget. So I'm hoping that in the future we can add this and this can be reviewed more in open council. Besides that, just one comment, we're not going to get rid of consulting 100%. Just to see if there is something we could do in-house, maybe a project here and there. And beyond that, as it was stated in the motion, the federal government just did a review and they found they were overusing consultants and they are now cutting back. So I think we should do an internal review of that as well. Thank you.
Councillor Kinnock, Councillor Bruni.
I'll just add something very briefly. I supported Councillor Kinnock on this. What I would be looking for is probably at the end of the year, find out exactly how much money has been spent on consultants. And I believe Councillor Kinnock would be satisfied with that. And a line per line item, I think it might be difficult, especially with some of the projects that are going on. But I think for councillors to understand exactly how much money is being spent on consultants, as you can see, 11 million between 2019, 2023. So I think it's a simple ask, and that's it.
Councillor Bruni, Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to try and talk myself into supporting this motion. To start with, I think it needs to be acknowledged that there's a huge difference between the municipal corporation and the federal government. Over the lifetime of the federal government's increase in use of consultants, they also grew the public service, so their own employees, by some 40%. That has not happened in the city of Sault Ste. Marie. In fact, a close examination of our workforce would show that we've actually shed FTEs as we've grown and used consultants in order to accomplish more of what we're doing. When I look at something like engineers that we have on staff in order to accomplish the completion of our capital budgets, the city has fewer engineers today than they once did. And largely a lot of that work has been taken up by consultants, by engineering firms that can consult on these projects, which allow us to complete our capital budget because our capital budget has also grown over that amount of time. When you look at each and every department as part of the budgetary process, that largely bears out what I would say is a rule for, especially our municipal corporation, that where you want to decrease consultants, you're going to automatically either cut work or increase your FTE count. And the issue that I've seen, not even just with this council, but with previous councils, is any proposal that comes to decrease consultant, and then even if it's a modest corresponding increase on the FTE count, it gets voted down at budget. Because in your year one, you're going to have a levy hit. And when I read this motion, the very first thing that came to mind was the clerk's proposal from this past budget, where we were given a whole business case to be able to decrease our use of consultants. I mean, they're outside legal firms, same thing to my mind, and to shift that work to the clerk's office to create value for the corporation, to save time, to save money from our solicitor. And the proposal failed because it came with a first year levy hit of $30,000. So I'm all for saving money. I'm all for making the process as clear as possible for folks who want to understand it. But I'm just struggling with the way this motion is worded, and I would like to hear something from Malcolm on how staff is interpreting it and what the deliverable will be. Because to me, even having reviewed that list of consultants off the top of my head, I could probably tell you what 90% of them were for. So is that what the response will be to this motion, is just for staff to fill in those blanks on the spreadsheet?
Through you, Mr. Councillor, through you, Mr. Councillor Dufour. Certainly, I want to recognize that the motion was revised and rewritten. So I think it's the clarity is a little clearer now that we can respond to. On the questions of consultants and what they're used for, I think that's a fair question for us to answer to council. The idea of a consultant in the general public's mind as to what the various ways we really do use consultants, such as you mentioned, consulting engineers that we use for design and contract administration of a lot of our capital work, and to what degree we use them. I think that's fair information for council. And I think it's fair information. I think it's fair to give us time to develop that for you, well in advance of next year's budget deliberation. So I think that will work out well. Staff will be able to give council a clear idea of where they're used, what they're used for, and have a bit of a discussion on the balance that you always try and get at a staff level between having a certain amount of staff capacity in-house, but not overdoing that. And then when you keep that balance right and use external third parties, which are coming under the same umbrella as consultants, we'll be able to show you why that's a more cost-effective way of getting the work done rather than to have a larger in-house staff component.
Okay, can we make sure that external legal counsel is captured in the definition of consultant and forms a fulsome part of this conversation then too?
Yeah, from a staff point of view, we'll be taking a broad view of
the definition.
The definition.
Okay.
As to it being a line item on a budget, that's probably a bit of a thornier question, and we'll come back to you with staff's view on if that can be done and how it could be done.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Caputo? Thank you, Councillor Dufour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to CAO White. Is this roughly $11 million over 4 years? Is that pretty typical for a municipality our size?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo, we'd have to do some
Okay.
comparative analysis, the information from municipalities. I would say that I would imagine the lion's share of that money does go to capital works related items in the design and contract administration work. And I would think most municipalities have a similar ratio.
Okay. I just want to echo some of Councillor Dufour's comments, and I do hope that if we can find efficiencies within the consulting line, that we do take it into consideration at budget time to expand staff when it is being asked, because there were some really good, especially the clerk's one, like Councillor Dufour said, business cases for staff. And though I get it's very important to like kind of play that game of like, how low can we get this budget? I think sometimes we need to focus on, what's best for the municipality. And if we're going to shave off in the consulting fees, I think we have to be ready to add in to the levy for those positions. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Caputo. Councillor Venezuelan.
Councillor Gardy was distracting me. Very much echoing what both Councillor Dufour and Caputo have said. I think, and Mr. White, hopefully you can answer this. Could there be a differentiation between consultants and professional fees? So I see if we're hiring an architect or an engineer, whether it's Twin Pad or Plaza or whatever, or, the stairs and the elevator, that sort of thing. Would that be helpful in terms of, because they are two different things. You need an architect to do certain things, especially with occupancy and level of work. Like, we don't have an option with that. I see that as professional fee. If we bring someone in to do a fleet review from a consulting firm, then I see that as a consultant. So has there been any discussion from staff, and I'm getting nods from Ms. Hamilton Beach, has there been any discussion with staff regarding that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Venezuelan, there's been some initial discussion. We'll certainly talk about it tomorrow morning at the senior management meeting when we about how this will be examined and reviewed. I think, though, at this time, we'll take a very broad view of the definition of consultant, but then break it down for you in just those types of classifications, whether it's professional services, whether it's particular expertise, it's a review. I think staff will be able to come back with something that satisfies council.
Okay. Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you, Councillor Venezuelan. Councillor Zagordo.
Just a comment. Whenever we hear consultants or consultations, usually it brings up to the community a negative kind of connotation. We don't hear too many comments in the positive. I think the motion in its essence is just trying to make it a little bit more transparent when those issues do come, or when, consultants come up, bring it out on the table. It might not be a line for line item as we discussed, but at least it might make, when it does come up or issues do come up, something that we can, discuss, bring forward, support, and at least to the community, provide more explanation why a consultant was hired in a particular situation. So in that light, I see the motion as, a positive thing, and not to, nitpick every department in terms of looking at consultants. So with that, I would definitely support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Zagordo. Other councillors, questions, comments? I think that from my part, what ultimately may be requested after this might be more difficult to support, but what's being requested here is, to bring some information back to us, and we'll, we can see what happens with it from there. But so certainly I support this, and I think the next step remains to be determined. With that, all in favor? Any opposed? That carries.
Council Spina. Oh, there we go. So we have 10 in favor and Councillor Dufour in the negative. That will bring us to agenda item 9.4, physician recruitment and retention. A motion by Councillors Kinnick and Hollingsworth. Whereas the Group Health Centre recently announced the derostering of 10,000 patients as a result of physician retirements or departures. And whereas there are believed to be 30,000 patients without access to a primary care provider in the Sault Ste. Marie area. And whereas the city of Sault Ste. Marie is not responsible for the delivery of healthcare, but plays a role in the recruitment and retention of physicians within our community. And whereas since its inception in 2002, the Physician Recruitment Committee has recruited 205 physicians to practice in our community, an average of 10 per year. And whereas the challenges in physician recruitment and primary care delivery are common across Ontario, and whereas access to primary care is an issue that impacts social and economic outcomes in our community. Now therefore be it resolved that City Council requests the Physician Recruitment and Retention Committee review its terms of reference and recommend changes to its funding partners to ensure its focus is on the delivery of primary care in the community, whether through adding nurse practitioner recruitment to their scope of duties or other efforts that may provide easier access to primary care to Sioux residents.
Council, this is obviously has come forward as a result of the very difficult announcement last week from the Group Health Centre that 10,000 of their patients are being derostered, with another 6,000 at risk of being derostered in the short term. As we all know, healthcare is a provincial issue that we will not be able to single-handedly resolve. However, we do play a role in physician recruitment, and it is something that I think we have an obligation to provide not just physician recruitment given the circumstances, but the best recruitment for primary healthcare that we can provide in our community. I think a logical way to do that is to expand the Physician Recruitment Committee to recruit other primary care providers, such as nurse practitioners or physician assistants. And hopefully that will help us in the short term alleviate some of the issues that while we work on long-term, while the province really works on long-term solutions of getting more graduates through the medical school system, attempting to resolve the remuneration challenges with family physicians specifically. And hopefully, as we heard in discussions today and over the weekend, a permanent and awesome presence here in Sault Ste. Marie, which would go a long way to having additional medical students experience our community and hopefully learn to love it as we all do and establish themselves here. So I thank Councillor Kinnick and Hollingsworth for moving and seconding this. I'll go to them first. Councillor Kinnick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just want to make some comments. So last year, through StatsCan, we had 1 million new Canadians in Canada. So that's Canada-wide. Our med schools are now not graduating enough students to keep up to service our population for new doctors. What is happening also is we are getting foreign trained doctors to fill the gaps in where our medical schools are not covering the population spread with the number of seats. Foreign trained doctors, it's taking them an average of 5 to 10 years from the time they submit their documents by the time they are licensed to work as a full MD in Canada. Last year, we had the residency matching program for all of Canada for all medical graduates or foreign trained doctors to start residency. There was 110 spots unmatched. And out of those 110 spots, 100 were family medicine. So their overall matching was 97%, but that is 100 family doctors that are desperately needed right now that now will never be filled. We cannot fill that halfway through the year. We can't double the number of or add those to next year. Those spots are just lost. I would like to see a more grassroots approach from communities, especially the northern communities, lobbying the province, federal government take more action, because this is not just Northern Ontario issue. This is all across Canada. Toronto currently has 305 unfilled family medicine positions. Ottawa has 171 unfilled family medicine positions. Hamilton has 114 family medicine positions. So this is an everybody problem. And with our public health care, access to the primary physician, family doctor, is your whole access to the whole healthcare system. You cannot see a professional without a referral from a family care physician or a nurse practitioner. So what is happening right now is people are going into the emergency rooms to get these referrals, and that is driving up emergency room times and clogging up the emergency system, people who do not have emergencies. So we need to look at a holistic approach, not just Northern Ontario, not just Ontario, but all of Canada, to get a push to get more seats in med schools, more students wanting to take family medicine, and servicing our public with proper medical services. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Kinnick. Councillor Hollingsworth?
Thank you. I think my previous colleague summarized the number of key issues really very well. And since this resolution has been put on our agenda, many other communities have started to jump in to raise the flag. So basically, we're going to lead the way once again to make this a very strong issue. But just a couple of comments. Residency is very important. There's a lot of challenges. I won't go through them, but residency, there's not enough teachers out there. There's family physicians that need to be teachers as well. There's a whole issue with that. Number of seats have already been dealt with. Remuneration has already been dealt with. So basically, this is just a small piece of a bigger picture. But I just want to emphasize that the walk-in clinics in Sault Ste. Marie and the community in Agoma and around, the one that I have been working with, most of the patients that come in don't have family physicians. And what is alarming is that they come in and they haven't seen a family doctor sometimes for 2 years and 3 years, and the same prescription they're taking, and they haven't been properly examined for 3 years. It's detrimental. The bottom line is, I know that most people around this table will support this resolution, and this is very complicated. It would take hours to explain what's happening with our healthcare system. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Gardy?
Well, I'll explain it in a couple of minutes. Quite frankly, this is what's happening at the Group Health Center and across the provinces is awful news. Very difficult news for everybody, especially in a community that has such an aged population. But let's not lose sight of the fact, and I'm glad, I believe it's referenced in the motion. This is entirely the purview of the provincial government. Like the federal government is a source of funds, and I'd welcome any of my colleagues or anyone in the community to go take a look at the funds provided by the federal government for healthcare. But this shouldn't have come as a shock to many. It specifically should not have come to a shock to Mr. Ford or any other member of parliament, provincial parliament, who represents this community or any other. This is their purview. It was years in the making. Now everything's kind of, coming to a head at once. I'm very hopeful that there's a plan. As far as municipally, I agree with force of habit, Mayor Shoemaker, to include physician assistants and nurse practitioners in the recruitment of primary care providers. Thanks.
Councillor Gardy? Other councillors, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That carries unanimously.
Pass to bylaws. Motion by Councillors Spina and Scott, resolved that all bylaws under item 12 of the agenda under date January 29, 2024, save and accept bylaws 2024-6, 2024-7, and 2024-12 be approved.
Favor. Counselor Scott.
Bylaw 2024-6 is a motion by Councillors Spina and Gardy, resolved that bylaw 24-6, being a bylaw to stop up, close, and authorize the conveyance of a portion of Queen Street East in the Pier subdivision, parts 4 and 5 on Plan 1R 14115 to the abutting owners be passed in open council this 29th day of January 2024. That's what we're voting.
All in favor?
Opposed. I'll vote in the affirmative for you. Okay. And bylaw 2024-7 is a motion by Councillor Spina and Gardy, resolved that bylaw 2024-7, being a bylaw to stop up, close, and authorize the conveyance of part of Pier Street and a 0.30 meter reserve, block 9 in the Pier subdivision, Plan 1M 448, be passed in open council this 29th day of January 2024.
All in favor?
It's okay. And then on bylaw 2024-12, motion by Councillors Spina and Gardy, resolved that bylaw 2024-12, being a bylaw to deem not registered for purposes of subdivision control certain lots in the Wilson B subdivision pursuant to section 50 sub 4 of the Planning Act, be passed in open council this 29th day of January 2024.
All in favor?
And a motion by Councillors Hollingsworth and Gardy, resolved that this council now adjourn.
All in favor? You.